Good morning and welcome to the East Brandywine Township Board of Supervisors work session for Thursday, March 7th, 2018. I just want to remind everybody tonight a recording device will be used, or this morning that a recording device will be used during this meeting. We're going to start the meeting with the Eagle Scout Service Project presentation. Welcome. I'm sorry, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody? Thank you, Traeger.
Traeger, if you want to go ahead and the clicker didn't work.
It did. Or did
No,
you do it?
I did it.
Okay.
Try that. Try it again. See if it'll. Okay. Let's do this. You just look at me and I'll forward the slide, okay?
My introduction. I am 13 years old and go to Downingtown Middle School, and I am in 8th grade. I've been playing soccer with the East Brandywine Youth Association for 11 years, since I was 3 years old. Since the beginning of playing soccer at the East Brandywine fields, I continued to excel and become an active member of my middle school soccer team and local travel leagues. For 8 years, I have been an active participant in the Boy Scouts of America for Chester County Council, 5 years as a Cub Scout, and 3 years as a Boy Scout. I'm currently part of the Hopewell Boy Scout Troop 8. I currently hold the rank of Life Scout and have earned 17 merit badges and 2 religious award medals. The reason for my Eagle Scout project. In August of 2017, my brother died from an arteriovenous malformation, AVM, also known as a brain bleed. That following summer, my Boy Scout troop planted a tree in his memory. I then later saw that it was necessary that I should contribute more. I realized the area that the tree was located was a little bland. I decided making the garden would give a little pop and catch the attention from people jogging or walking the neighboring trail. My proposal. I am making a garden around my brother's tree to give a resting place for people that are jogging or walking the trail. I noticed that there wasn't many benches and thought to myself, what if people want a quick place to rest or recharge? I'm going to make a brick path leading to the bench and the tree. And to add color, I'm going to put in flowers and bright seasonal shrubs. What the tree looks like now. So as you can see, there's nothing really around. There's a couple fields in the background, but really it's just the standing tree alone. And what the tree will look like in a few years. So as you can see, this is the maple that was planted, but it by itself isn't really that much, and I feel that adding the garden around it will make it look a lot better. Possible plans for the garden. So here I have some diagrams I wrote up, and they're set at 53 feet by 24 feet. There's a tree in the middle and 3 little patio areas where you can sit and walk around a little bit. There's a bench right in front of the tree and a bench behind the 3rd patio. Some estimated costs. The total will be about $3,500. The brick path, about 1,350 bricks, will be about $600. The mulching will be about $700. The flowers, all of them in total, will be $300. The shrubs will be $500. The benches will be $500 each. The cement would be $300, and the sand would be about $275. Underneath, you can see a couple of flowers that I decided would be good because they are they're perennials and they don't take much work to maintain. Wildlife resistance. All year round, as you know, there are many animals. These animals may fly or trot, but in the end, they have to eat to live. My goal is to find plants for the garden that these animals won't eat. For example, I have about 20 chickens at home. My chickens love to eat hostas. Now that my family knows this, we do not plant hostas where the chickens are. In the East Brandywine Youth Association Park, there will be no wild chickens, so hostas would be okay to plant. Fundraising and support. I'm going to go to local hardwood stores and ask for funds. I'm going to go Home Depot and Lowe's and try to set up a bench and ask for donations. I'm going to start a GoFundMe and ask that for family and friends that they pay $50 so that they can engrave their name on each brick that I lay down. So it'll be a good way to show that they contributed to my brother's garden. Benefits. People will have a great place to rest. It will make the park entrance look more appealing because it is by the front. It will provide a place to sit when you want to watch your kid play soccer or baseball. Garden is between the two fields. And it creates a place to relax and enjoy the weather. The maintenance. The construction of the garden will be provided by the Hopewell Boy Scout Troop 8 and other friends and neighbors. I will use low maintenance perennial flowers and shrubs, so after the garden is complete, it will not be hard to maintain. Thank you very much for your time. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question. How can I make a donation to your cause?
I'm going to be setting up a GoFundMe, and once the construction starts, I will be having some bricks get engraved, and so you could put your name on it for $50, and I could put your brick in, and it would cut back on some of the money because I will not need the brick.
I'll tell you what, why don't you, when you get your GoFundMe page set up, why don't you send your link to the township, and then we'll forward it to all the staff, and we'll get a good start there. How's that?
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Your, Traeger, your dad has my email address, so you can just use that. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
I think that was a great presentation.
It was a great presentation. I just have a suggestion, and maybe Mr. Pearsall can help you facilitate it. We have a fellow who lives in the township named David Culp, who's a renowned gardener. And if Scott could try to introduce you to David and have him look over your plans, I think it might be very valuable to you, because he could might direct you specifically toward the specific plants, because I know hostas, the chickens like hostas. I think the deer do as well. So you may want to look at that, what you're going to put into the garden. And I also hope that in your brother's memory, you will come back and do some maintenance on this as you get older and go through life, because I think that would be a great tribute to him.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Very well done.
Yep, thank you very much for your presentation. And again, when you get that set up, send it to the township, and we'll start with the donations here. Okay? Thanks, buddy.
Your time.
Thank you. Okay, public comment for non-agenda items. Just a reminder, rules of conduct for public meetings established by Resolution 2001-08. The time allotted to each individual making a comment shall be 3 minutes unless otherwise set by the presiding officer. Additional public comment may be granted at the discretion of the presiding officer at the conclusion of the meeting. Anybody for public comment?
Matt Kanapesky, 425 Creek Road. Can I get some stuff on the overhead, please? I've been coming to these meetings for nearly a year with my concerns about title identity theft on my property. I see that my local taxes, even though the acreage now matches what my deed says, my name is still misspelled on the local township tax forms. Per our last conversation about the Wyomissing water plant and that parcel, I see that it was deeded in 2002 and was created from at least 3 different acreages. There's premise A, with a description. There's present B, premise B with a description. And on the cover page, it says that it's made of 3 premises, but only 2 are described. And then on other documents, it says there's 4 premises, and only 2 are described. And then they're very misleading, because they'll go from a title of track 1 to premise B, premise A, track 2. So I don't really know what's going on here, but I'm getting tired of asking the same questions over and over again. So in the last 2 weeks, did you guys get my emails and everything with the township manager?
Yeah, your emails did come across. Let's back up for a second. Your name misspelling is with the tax collector. Tax collector is a elected official by the tax people. So he's not an employee of the township. So you would have to air your grievance with the tax collector for the misspelling of your name, which I'm assuming would start with the county. So that has nothing to do with the township, your tax
Well,
collector.
not to interrupt you, but how come it's all on me? What exactly does this board do?
I think I can explain what you need to do to get your name corrected. Understand that the tax collector gets a data file from the county every year that shows the owners of the property, and it's based upon that they generate tax bills. So if your name is incorrect on the county records, and I understand from what you've told us before that it was incorrect on the deed that you got when you bought the property, what you need to do is correct that deed, and the way to do that is to file what is called a deed of correction with the county, and then it will be properly reflected on the county records and subsequently properly reflected on the township tax bills.
Again, Mr. Fisher, I'm completely aware of what a deed correction is. This is title identity theft. So what you're recommending I'm doing is the equivalent of scrubbing a crime scene. I'm not gonna go around and just fix everything and make it look like nothing happened that you, sir, are involved in, and you are on video lying about. So besides my name misspelled, I have 3 different acreages of my property matching 3 different inconsistent acreages of the property that you guys inherited for $1 from the felony convicted developers. So, if you're not gonna survey my property, you were willing to survey Wyomissing, but we never actually concluded that decision. So, Ken, at this point, can we survey the Wyomissing property, determine exactly how it was created and what its boundaries are, so we can all move forward with our lives?
So my suggestion, when you had brought it up the last time, was if it's a private property, meaning if it was your property, or if it was any resident of East Brandywine's property, as a township or as an entity, we can't just go in and start surveying people's property. When I found out that it had something to do with donated properties to the township, that's when I had stated up here on record that absolutely I'm on board if it's township property.
Yeah.
We can't go start surveying residents' properties, because then everybody's gonna want their property surveyed and the township's on the hook for it. I don't wanna open Pandora's box. However, if it's something regarding the township's donated property, I don't have a problem with it, me personally.
I totally agree with you. I mean, the inception of that property was from the Wyomissing property in either 1960 or 1961, when it was the Higgies. And it's unclear. So somebody is messing with the GIS maps, somebody has committed title identity theft, and here are the documents showing that the Wyomissing property in 2002 brought together 3 different properties, only describing 2 of them. And then there's potentially a 4. And then here on the actual real estate transfer document, it has a corrective and confirmatory deed attached and then another box is checked saying that the deed which confirms existing title ownership for the 4 parcels. So it says in the same documents, 4 parcels has a description of 3, and the 3 are mislabeled as actually 2, describing the same thing. Now, I know this is confusing, but it's intended to be, so that they can get away with it. And I mean, it's not going away.
I think we should just go ahead and get our property surveyed and check it.
Yeah, I don't, like,
Just understand that surveying the property that we acquired is not going to address his concern about the acreage of his property.
Right. Well,
So
I
the
think-
only way for him to do that, or for that to be accomplished, is to survey his property. So you're back into your question or your dilemma about surveying private people's properties.
You don't have to spend any money. I'm sure the records are somewhere. You don't have to send out new surveyors. And a matter of fact, I prefer not to have new surveyors because I'd be in question of who they work with and who they have done business with.
what was that?
The surveyor has to go mark the boundaries of the property, physically mark the boundaries. I'm not,
I think that was already done. Now, whether those marks still exist out there or not is another issue, but
but to Jay's point, what does that show you? It shows you the boundaries of the property the township acquired. That doesn't, how does that
Well-
help
But he's
Mr.
saying that
Kampesky?
our property changed.
Yeah, there's a 7.7, a 7.63, and a 7.1. And even if you add up the 3 different premises that are described, none of them equal that acreage.
What, I'm assuming there was 3 different surveys done to come up with those 3 different,
I have to pull up the survey that was done originally and just maybe have someone go out and mark the deeds and
where, the,
What you own is what's in the deed that was transferred to you. So that's the relevant legal description.
And I have
Legal description that's
the
attached to
deed,
the
and it
deed of
says
dedication
in
is
the
what
middle of
marks
the
your
Brandywine.
boundaries.
And currently, my waterfront property, or my property in the water, which I have to write a permission slip for even the Brandywine Trout Club annually to Bill Hayes, I think his name is, the vice president. He writes me a request for permission to enter on my property absolutely every single year. Bob Bonney comes to my house like pretty much every single Sunday when he's on duty, despite Mr. Fish, or Mr. Pearsall blatantly lying about it.
so let's start with this. Can we find out, I guess it would be from the deed that we received for the Missing Tract, who did the original survey for that property, or who did it for the transaction to occur for us to acquire it?
Would have been E.B. Walsh.
Okay, so if we start with E.B. Walsh, and I'm assuming that they would have their markers set up still in place, or at least where their monuments were put, it shouldn't be a full survey. It should be a partial survey if they have record of where to go.
yeah, it's gonna mark it out again.
Right.
So what's that going to do then? So what does that?
Well, if it delineates our township property, which we've acquired, and for sake of an argument, if it's a different square footage than what we were allotted, then possibly it would show that there is a discrepancy with his property.
If you bought a car and found out it's stolen, you gotta do, there's a process there.
I think we should do that.
Understanding the underlying assertion of what.
I mean, again, I can't justify going onto a residence property and doing it for, as I said, for sake of opening up a can of worms. But if it's something that the township, I don't personally have a problem with it, as long as it's,
Well, I think at first, I wouldn't want to spend any of the taxpayers' money. I think the first thing to do is just go through the records and determine the storyline and get actual clarity from the Sheltons, the Crafts, the Insleys, Mr. Fisher, because he signed half of these documents, the previous board. I've been property audited 14 times now in 12 years, 9 from the township, 4 from DEP, 2 of them being surprise audits. I mean, I've had complete transparency. I've attended nearly every meeting. There's now a criminal investigation underway for Mr. Pearsall. You all got about a half a dozen emails that don't have my opinion. They show Pearsall lying, and they show the evidence. The evidence speaks for itself. Now, I understand there's a process and everything, but while this is all going on, I've been paying a mortgage for 12 years that I don't know if I own anything.
All right, well, I guess we're going to have to reach
To
out to you.
open up a property investigation to clarify the why missing lots, how it was obtained, what the actual acreage is, and then hopefully we can conclude everything. And then you guys won't see me anymore.
I don't know how we go through. Do we start with E.B. Walsh, I'm assuming?
They did the survey for the entire Hillendale development.
All right, and again, I'm not 100% clear, I wasn't around during this, but so the Hillendale development donated the Wyomissing tract to the,
So Wissahickon,
or, I'm sorry, Wissahickon tract to the township
yes.
as part of their development?
Right.
Open space.
Part of the required open space
Okay.
in the subdivision ordinance.
Part of the problem, Kyle, is that there's a very unique property that Johnny Shelton owns. That paper mill was built before electricity was available or invented, one or the other. So literally, that building was there before Nikolai Tesla decided alternating current. So there's actually dormant turbines that property is connected to in Marsh Creek. But the second those turbines become live and make over $2,500, they'll be taken by the Army Corps of Engineers. So attached to that property, think of the paper mill as a octopus. The building is the head, and it has tentacles reaching out through the passageways of the water. So even though the Wyomissing paper mill was inherited by the township, the water itself is part of it's called POW, the paper mill right of way or something like that. And so there's water rights from Marsh Creek all the way to my property, and my property is the very first one that's owned by somebody who is willing to do, to just be a good citizen. And apparently, whether they knew it or not, the intention was to obtain these properties to bring water service from Euclid over to this neighborhood. But when Johnny Shelton was canceled out of the project for whatever reason and Jack Lowe took over, I don't think they realized that Shelton owns the waterway. So it was unable to go through there without appeasing his demands. And he has all kinds of litigation back and forth. He might or might have not done anything illegal. I don't know. It might just be a matter of money, and they weren't willing to go that route. Nevertheless, I have the plans from E.B. Walsh showing the water line is in that property. Now, you've also seen where I've done an 811 call to mark aqua lines on my property where it exists, and 811 says it doesn't exist on my property. So if I do an 811 call, which I can to other people's property, because I do it all the time in my business, I can simply call 811 and have them mark the utilities on the Wyomissing thing, and I don't know what will happen.
Well, so you're talking about PA1 call, 811? So PA1 call, the township could call for the Wyomissing tract because they're going to be doing the demolition of the building we were just talking about, and there's, that could be done on the township side.
Yeah, but who's gonna do it?
Well,
I
we
need
can-
some
we can set that-
transparency.
I mean, that's a free service for them to come out and do the, or
No,
it's
I know that, but it actually says 811 on the drawings, and including on my drawing, says 811, here's the water line, and the water line doesn't exist. My problem with the township handling this, Scott Pearsall has been lying for over a decade.
All right, well, let's
Now, how am
keep
I-
it to the supervisors right now and try and get some some clear direction on where we're going to go with this. Let's start with this. I don't have a problem, me personally, we'd have to vote on it, of doing a survey of the parcel that the township acquired.
Kyle, can you just step back for a second? What is the goal of doing that? Is it to see that what the township owns? I just want to make sure I want to solve your problem, Mr.
Oh,
Canterbury.
yeah,
I really
I
do.
can tell.
But surveying the township property, I'm trying to understand how that helps you. Is it your assertion that part of your land somehow was included in the township's deed? Is that what you think?
My parcel was created from the Wyomissing lot. That Wyomissing lot has 4 different entities to it. I mean, where is it? Right here, 4 parcels consolidated. Now, there's only 3 described, and the 3 that are described are mistitled several different ways. Premise A, and then later on it's called Track 1.
Deeds can be
Premise B.
confusing, because how they're described depends on what survey or what document they're described off of, and how the engineer or the surveyor titles them on that document. So again, am I right in saying that your assertion is that if we survey the township property, it might determine that what we're surveying was actually land that's included in your deed? Is that what you believe?
What?
Is your property, are you saying that your property line is wrong? If the survey will help determine where the exact property line is that what you're looking for?
I have title identity theft. Somebody created a false version of my last name.
I understand that.
And with that title identity theft, there's 3 different acreages. There's also 3 different parcels described on the property that was inherited by the township for $1.
Matt, I know, but what is the conclusion of today's discussion? What is it you're looking for them to do?
I want a investigation over what exactly the acreages are, the different parcels that were consolidated, and where mine stands. So no surveying, you don't have to spend any money, the records are in the office. So open the records, organize them.
Who's gonna, I mean, I'll be honest with you, this is above my pay grade. I don't know how to decipher through the records. Who,
Does?
that's, I mean,
No, I know, but
Well, if my board can't figure out their own records
So-
for
so-
the land that they inherited, I mean, what are we supposed
but
to
what
do
I'm
with
saying
that?
is, do you want an impartial person to be doing that's what I'm.
I think the evidence speaks for itself.
All right, so Luke, that's something you can figure out, you can,
I'm not qualified to do
That's what I'm
deed
thinking.
research.
I'm trying-
Well, I can tell you right now, Wells Fargo, who I now have my mortgage with, they've extended their executive investigation for the 4th time. So there are a ton of people looking at this. I guess what it's gonna show is whoever on this board says one thing and all the information is gonna say something else. And then it's suspected to get a new DA voted in here. So we're gonna be looking at a massive amount of criminal charges and everything come January. I mean, it might not work right now based on who's in power and the largest law firm in Westchester, but it's coming.
yeah, I don't have a problem, I definitely don't have a problem pulling the file. I'm being honest, me personally, I don't have the first clue on how to read through title and.
You don't
deed.
have to. If you can organize the paperwork that has to do with the Aqua Water Main Extension Plan, the township voted on it, so that should be in the minutes, whether it's through the secretary or one of the different, meetings that you guys have. It's a learning process for me too, but I'm not in any of your position. I'm a tree surgeon, and I figure it out.
And then, so I don't have a
So the
problem.
Water Main Extension Plan, the development LOD, which is the limit of disturbance, and it's including my property. Well, the topography of my property doesn't allow any construction or disturbance or anything past 350 feet of elevation or whatever, which is basically my cesspool. So anything pertaining to parcel 30-382, where mine is 30-382.1, and then I also have 30.
Hang on 1 second, put his name next to that so that we know that that's his.
And you need the misspelling of my last name. Because if you look up on Chesco Views or Chesco Pin, nothing comes up unless you know the misspelling of the name.
Yeah, and that I believe is
think it was done
county
twice.
oriented. And
after
I,
the fact,
you know, as I said earlier, the tax collector.
Same mistake. I mean, that is amazing.
So, and then back to the,
What's the third parcel?
the,
Well, the one you guys have is 30382-E. And that's how a lot of these.
E?
Yeah, as in exempt. And then somebody filed a farm exemption tax at the settlement of my property and got accepted. So who did that? So that nobody was recognizing the
parcel.
inconsistencies of my acreage, so my taxes remained like somewhat stable. I mean, somebody is up to something funny.
all right, and then the third thing would be for the township, which is not a cost to do the
PA1 call?
PA1 call for the 811 for the property they acquired.
I can do that.
And Matt, you okay with doing that?
Yeah, you have to do one prior to demolition anyhow.
Yeah, that's what I was, so, I mean, that's.
Can you just do it now? Like,
Yeah. it can
Well,
be
no,
done
you
at any
can't,
time.
because it has to be done so many days before demolition, or else you have to do it all over again, so,
But you can do a PA1 call without doing a demolition.
okay, all right. All right, so we'll start with that. I mean, I can't promise you we're gonna build Rome in a day, but it's,
No, I hear you. I appreciate it.
okay.
And then who should be my point of contact, so I'm not coming here every time or whatever?
If you want, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment for non-agenda items? Seeing none, we're
I do
good.
actually, sorry. Can we, with this, as far as the minutes go, can we just, since we have it already videotaped, why do we have to write the minutes every time?
Sunshine Law requires it.
But can't we just use our agenda and then put nay, yay?
No, the Sunshine
votes?
Law specifically says that you have to keep records of every, basically, item of discussion. If there was a motion made, who made the motion, who made the second, and what the outcome of the motion was, and then any matters of public comment, you're supposed to state the person's name and generally what they talked about.
But I mean, but couldn't we just keep the videos
No, you need.
in archive and then?
You need written minutes. The Sunshine Law
And we
does not allow videos to be the minutes that's required under the law.
You could probably put at the end of the minutes that are being handwritten, something to the clause of, for exact, please see video, or something like that,
Yeah, the minutes can always
I didn't know
reflect
if it
the
could be
fact
like-
that, the minutes can always reflect the fact that there is a video of the meeting and
Yeah.
how you can get to that. But
Don't we have a limited archive on the
Yeah,
videos?
I think we do, but I mean,
I thought we could do this.
I think that's
Like,
why you have detailed.
keep like the agenda and just put yay, 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 and then that's
But
for
the-
votes, but then.
the minutes should
then
reflect what the actual motion was.
I didn't know you could just say, point to a video. All right. Just try to make it easier for.
But remember, we don't keep the videos forever,
long, right,
so.
right.
the
You'd have to
written
put on
record-
there for a limited time, minutes are kept at such and such, but,
But we have an obligation to keep them forever, so that's why you do them in writing, you approve them, and then they go into a book or a file that.
What's your concern, Jason? What?
I was just trying to save time.
Okay, yeah, I mean, the minutes, every municipality does it a little bit differently, and every municipality, some do much more voluminous minutes that sort of transcribe pretty much everything that's said, and others are more what you're talking about, more just sort of a summary outline. So if you want to scale them back, you can do that as long as motions, seconds, and the outcome of the vote, and then if there's public comment, the person's name, and what topic they were discussing.
I've been to township meetings where the secretary doesn't take the minutes, they actually transcribe them. They have a court reporter that comes to every meeting and transcribes the entire meeting, and then the secretary produces minutes from this transcript.
Seems expensive.
Well, it is, but if you have somebody, that's, some of the smaller townships, the secretary really can't do what our esteemed secretary can do, so that's their workaround, is to have a transcript.
That was my comment.
okay. All right, so earlier I made a comment for non-agenda items. I saw none, so we moved on to, Jason did have a question, but also, did you have a question you want to? Okay, all right, so now we're going to go to the minutes of previous meetings. This is what I was talking about. Did you want to change something?
No.
Okay. All right, so Board of Supervisors, February 21st, 2019,
Motion that they be approved is submitted.
and I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the Planning Commission, February 6th of 2019.
Motion that they be approved as submitted.
I'll second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Old business, the maintenance garage RFP. Matt?
Thank you. On February 27th, I distributed a email to the board, hopefully answering some of the questions from the previous meeting. And so staff is requesting that permission to proceed with the RFP, send it to engineering firms, and we're willing to entertain any other questions from the board.
I think we should wait till next year, at least, because I think have a little bit more planning for the site, is my opinion.
Well, the RFP, I don't think that puts us on the hook for anything, correct?
Well, the RFP would be for design of the building, and then eventually the bid specification. So if there's, during the design process, the board can be very much involved in that particular process.
So, I mean, I don't really see us warranting a design. Can't we just go to a metal fabrication shop and have something like what we have right now? I mean, do we need to have it designed, I guess, if it's just enclosing a storage shed, so to speak, a
Right.
bigger version?
Well, yeah, you're correct. More than likely, the engineering firm would go to a manufacturer. Like the building out there now is Chief is the building manufacturer.
And that sits on a concrete pad, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, I guess that's what I'm getting at. If we had our specifications, couldn't we just say, for a price bid out, we're looking for a structure that would be 30 by 40 and fit on X pad?
We would still need to prepare bid specifications because you would have separate electrical contractor bid. We do not plan on putting plumbing in there, but there's, a heating, you would need a bid for the heating portion of it. Possibly site work, but they may be able to include the construction and the site work within the same bid specification.
I think that the confusion, Kyle, is that if you're a private person who's doing it, you would meet with a builder or developer, and you would work out all of the details of what you wanted to have built, and then you would have a contract, and you could just simply enter into the contract with the developer, but all those details would be ironed out. Because we're a township, we have to, in essence, create the outline, not just outline, but the very specifics of what we want to have built, and that it gets incorporated or creates a bid package. And then when somebody bids on that, that gets incorporated into the contract. The contract is actually very simple because it says you're going to build what the RFP said we wanted. So in a lot of respects, from a private person, it looks like you're putting the cart before the horse, but that's the process that we have to go
But
through.
I guess my biggest concern is we haven't agreed on what we're going to build yet, and then if you're going for an RFP, that's where the confusion's going to be.
We're not going for, the RFP that Matt is proposing is not to build the building. That's the next step. The RFP he's proposing is to go through that design process to determine exactly what you need and what's going to be incorporated in it. So, but if you're saying, and I'm not saying you, but I know Jason's raised some questions about whether we actually need this building or whether we need it as big. Though needing the building is a decision you make before you go through this design process. Once you decide you need the building, then the design process would determine if it's actually going to be 5 bays like Matt's outlined, or 4 bays, or what it's going to be.
All right, and I guess, I don't have a problem with it, but again, I do have some concerns about the size of our needs, what we're putting in there for all enclosed. I don't have a problem with some enclosed, some with just a roof structure on them. So,
Well, then that needs to be, you guys need to take a step back then.
That's
Yeah.
Because the RFP
Absolutely.
specifies design of a
You take
5.
a step back and make sure the board's in agreement, or at least 2 of you are in agreement with exactly what it is you're asking a professional to go design.
that's exactly
And understand that because it's a professional service, you don't have to by law bid it. Most townships would still do it to make sure that they're getting the biggest bang for their buck, and it's public taxpayers that are paying for it. But because it's a professional service, whether it's an architect or a civil engineer, the second-class township code does say you don't have to go through an RFP process.
So why,
So if, for example, I know in Upper Euclid, they're doing an addition to their building, they asked, that Carrie Vargo called around and got recommendations from other municipalities that had done additions to their municipal complexes, architectural firms that had experience in doing that. He then, with the board, made a list, made some phone calls, and had interviews of those 3 architecture firms. They didn't go and put it out, they didn't do a bid process. They informally did a process like that, but ultimately didn't come down to the design professional that was the cheapest. It was the design professional that they felt had the most, understanding of what the township's needs were, et cetera. I mean, price obviously factored into it. So that's always in the background. If you choose not to RFP it, you don't have to.
well, my recommendation at this point would be to, obviously, we still have very little clarity on, obviously, no one knows this more than you, what you need, but what we realistically can burden the taxpayer with. So my thought process at this point is going directly to Chief, I think you said the name of the company was that made the structure, finding out, so we have some type of a price point on what their buildings with 3 bays, 4 bays, and 5 bays costs, and then if you can bring that back to us, I mean, if you're completely happy with the chief building, then at least we have a leg to stand on. And we know, all right, it's gonna be $50,000, I'm just throwing a rough number out, $50,000 for electric and heating, and it's gonna be $150 for the structure. At least we can come in here and say, all right, now we have a ballpark before we start getting an engineer involved. That would be my recommendation, but again, I'll leave it to you guys for your thoughts.
Well, and I guess I'm a little bit confused. I don't have a problem with tabling this and then sitting down and having a discussion with Matt about what exactly is needed, but I don't think I don't want to spend more than we can afford, but I don't think you make the decision based upon what the cost is going to be of a 3-bay or a 4-bay or a 5-bay. If we need a 5-bay and we can't afford it right now, then maybe we have to scale it back or design it so that it could be expanded in the future. But I think the focus, which is the issue Jason's raising, is do we really need the building? And if we do need the building, how big a building do we need? Then you have to deal with the cost.
Yeah, I think that'd be good to sit down and
And I think Matt's provided us with some materials, but apparently there's still some outstanding questions. So tabling it for a month or so and maybe having a separate discussion with Matt about it would be the way to go.
And again, I'm not asking you to spend days on research, just even some quick numbers to say, hey, the building we have right now, how big is that one we have right now?
It's a 6-bay with essentially a 7th bay, which includes the bathroom and the restrooms and the little kitchenette area.
And if we could come back and say, because again, the additions later on might be even better as well. If you were able to get a building that was structured right now, we pour the concrete and had the stub outs there for fishing electric later. I'm just thinking out loud if it comes to that, that's all.
But in order to do that, you still have to go through the bid process because you're going to have to hire a contractor. It's going to be above the bidding specifications, so you're going to have to hire.
But at least
bids out
finding out
there.
some type of a ballpark so that we have an idea is all.
Okay.
You know, rather, you know, just, you
I
know.
think what you're saying, Matt, is that chief is only going to give you the cost of the building itself, not putting it up.
I'm not exactly sure. I spoke to Weaver, that was that price from 3 years ago, the $250,000 price.
Yeah.
And I contacted a couple different builders, Hoover, I think it is. I don't think Hoover does for municipalities. At that time, anyhow, it was 3 years ago. But Weaver is the one who would give me like a quick price as to what he thought it would be. And that's the building.
Total price.
Concrete pad, but it would not include electrical or any type of plumbing, heating, or anything like that. So the main reason why I did that was for budget purposes, 3 years later, where we are right now, essentially guesstimating what the total cost of the building would be. So I took that 250, and I would imagine there wouldn't be any problem with another $150,000 to do electrical and the heat. That's how I arrived at the $400,000.
Yeah, and again, same thing, I don't know if heat is necessarily needed for a structure that's just storing vehicles. No garage in Chester County probably, with the exception of maybe a handful, has heat. If it's just, I get where you guys are working in that structure. The one we currently have has heat in the bathroom, but if the other one is just used for storage for the most part, I don't see if heat is actually warranted. Obviously, electric is needed, but I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud.
Right.
All right,
But
so-
mainly every municipality municipal garages are heated.
Right, but I understand we also have one right now that's
Right.
fully heated, operational restrooms, electric, the whole 9 yards. If the other one is just used for storage, you know, I'm just thinking out loud. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. New business, the PA Department, PA DEP Performance Grant Act 101, Section 902 application. Luke.
Yeah, this is me. Good morning. Part of my report at the last meeting, I indicated that I would have a application for grant funding in for one of your 2 March meetings. I do have it ready now. It's actually only in the 3 of your packets. I wanted to save a little bit of paper. The important page is number 11. It's actually the last page. It's the dollar amount, the bottom line. I'm making an application for the PA DEP to pay 90% of the cost of the toters we just bought. It can be applied retroactively. We ran out of toters, so we needed to order them in a pinch, but this grant, if awarded, would pay 90% of those costs. I've also included a second project because while they're paying 90 cents on the dollar, I threw in changes to our recycle ordinance. There's a couple of changes that need to be made. So I included the cost of advertising and legal review. I put in $2,000 for that process. So as long as they're paying 90 cents on the dollar, we might as well also do this project. So the application doesn't require a resolution or a letter of support from the board, but what I am asking is for just by motion permission to make application for Act 101, Section 902 grant funding in the amount of, the funding that we're asking for is $32,840.
I'll make a motion that we authorize Luke to proceed with the application for the recycling program grant in the amount of $32,840.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mary, closure of the DNB escrow account.
Thank you. Last year, the township accepted the deed of dedication of Kestrel Drive and Hawks Nest Meadows development. There was a performance escrow account established for this development in accordance with a road and improvement construction agreement with the township. As part of the dedication, the developer, Janda Enterprises, provided a letter authorizing the release of the remaining funds in this escrow account to East Brandywine Township and to close out the account. In order to accomplish this, DNB requires a cover letter from the township with 3 authorized signatures. You will find this letter included in your meeting packet, and I am requesting consensus approval to proceed to close the escrow account and transfer the funds to the township's general fund. The amount in this account is $4,024.48.
I'll make a motion that we authorize closing the escrow account 8975112 and transfer the remaining funds in the escrow account to the township general fund account.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, subdivision and zoning applications. So we have East Brandywine Baptist Church here regarding the LEAP preschool. Welcome. If you wouldn't mind, start out with your name and.
Sure,
just so-
absolutely. Thank you. My name is Brian Fuller. I'm one of the pastors over at East Brandywine Baptist Church, right on here, 999 Horseshoe Pike.
Welcome.
Thank you. We, in 2017, toward the end of 2017, our elders authorized us to explore the possibility of starting a preschool, which would be a ministry of our local church. I think technically it would be for ages 2.7 to 5 years old, is what I'm told. We had the privilege last week of meeting with Scott, Frank, and Bruce, I think, with a few of our folks. And they determined, after we presented, that we needed to apply for a conditional use. While we are approved for religious use, this would be, I think, under the category of a school. So they advised us to give you a heads up before we submitted the application, which we'd like to do this week. This part of the exploration, we're a congregationally led church or governed church. So before we can present this possibility to our people, we need to make sure that it is a possibility. So I have the forms that I sent over to the administrative assistant. I don't know if you have those, but I have those available if you'd like for me to give them to you. It looks like you have them.
Yes.
What's included there is just a general overview of what the program would look like. It would be a Monday to Friday preschool, not a daycare. We have also laid out for you our current attendance on a Sunday and a Wednesday night for our children's ministries, so that you can kind of get a look of how the facility is being used presently. There's some pictures of our wing, our preschool wing presently, and how it's being used. And then there's a picture that's not as clear as we'd like of a possible drop-off, pickup for the preschool, and a placement of the playground. So that is what that is, to give you a look-see before we submitted an application, which we'd like to submit this coming week.
Do you currently have a preschool there?
We do not have an official preschool on Monday to Friday. We have a preschool ministry on Wednesday nights and Sundays. We call it EBBC Kids Ministry. That happens at 9 o'clock during the first service, and then again at 10:45 at the second service. And on Wednesday nights, we have Awana, and that is at 6:30 and goes to 8:15 on Wednesdays.
Are you doing any changes to the buildings, or is it just the use that you're adding?
It's just the use. We are anticipating some upgrades, but that's because we are trying to navigate through a ever-growing nursery. So we are going to hopefully do some adjustments to our EBBC Kids wing, but it's not because of this preschool opportunity that we're exploring.
And the playground would be the only real addition.
Correct. And we do have a gymnasium that I think there's a picture included there. So that would also be a play area if we were to have a preschool.
And Scott, the definition of religious use doesn't allow accessory uses such as a preschool? Because I know a lot of, I went to a preschool that was in a church, so a lot of, it's a very common incidental subordinate use of a religious use. So rather than have them spend money if it's something that can be approved through just looking at the definitions and common accessory uses. Try to avoid them from going through a conditional use hearing.
Chris, and I appreciate that. That was part of our discussion. I think Scott would attest to that, about whether it should be included under religious use, because we will be teaching the scriptures and the gospel to the kids if we open up a preschool. And I do think there's other preschools in the township, but it sounds like they may have opened before the clarity in these declarations.
For the language.
Hopewell School opened 40-plus years ago. And looking at the township's first zoning ordinance, there was no such requirement at that time. Frank and I talked at length about the religious definition, and it doesn't, in our opinion, doesn't include the religious use in school are two separate things. There's nothing under the religious use, or religious definition that includes school.
But is there anything in?
hardship or
Is there anything, there's not, they don't have to prove a hardship. Is there anything in, and I'm sorry, I don't have my zoning ordinance with me, I should have brought it.
I have it.
But, for that zoning district that has a general accessory uses to any of the permitted uses above? No? Okay.
No.
I'm trying my hardest here.
Thank you. If I could ask, who makes that determination?
Zoning officer.
Okay, okay,
And that's Frank.
got it. And Frank was clear that he thought it needed to be a conditional use. Okay.
I think that
Brian,
affords you some protection as well, because
Yeah.
once you get the conditional use, nobody can come back later and challenge the use, so
Okay.
you're actually better off. I know it's a burden to go through it, but you're better off
Well,
doing
you could
that.
also, if there was a zoning determination that said it's permitted as an accessory component to religious use, and nobody appealed that determination, then that determination's final in the township 30 days after, but it's fine. I mean, there's probably likely impacts that, you know, the township's gonna wanna be aware about, drop off, pick up, emergency services, that kind of thing. It's going beyond what you have now, so, as far as, I think Mr. Fisher's trying to say is that it protects you to a certain extent as well, because then you'll be able to show the participants of the school that you went through the proper channels. If the township imposed conditions, those conditions have to be related to protecting the public health, safety, welfare,
Okay.
which obviously you would be concerned about. So, yeah, I'm not saying there's a right way or a wrong way, I'm just recognizing the fact that you have a little bit of this going on now, seeing if there was any wiggle in the interpretations. But
And I'm assuming Chief would want to have some say on the outside playground and overall viewpoints and such.
Well, I had two questions. One, what is you have a max number of enrollment that you're looking at?
Well, right now, our facility, we average, as you see in the notes there, about 83 on Sundays and a little over 100 on Wednesday evenings. And that pretty much is our children's wing. They're not all in the same location at the same time. The thing about the preschool is because it's a Monday to Friday, and there'll be the option of a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or a Tuesday, Thursday, or an all week, you wouldn't have all of the children there at the same time. So I anticipate that we wouldn't go above what we're normally enjoying as a Sunday morning enrollment or a Wednesday evening enrollment. There was some question we had the other day about our current, I don't know that there's a posting of how many children we can have in that wing. I do know that there are some stipulations in regards to child-teacher ratio, so that we would have to abide by those. But I don't know the exact number of that right now.
I'm assuming that would also fall under the fire marshal stuff, Scott, in regards to number of personnel?
It's a building code issue.
Right, okay. The playground, you plan on having that enclosed?
My understanding is it has to be, if I understood
I
the,
didn't see anything about a fence around it.
yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The thought would be to, a couple locations we thought about that would be proposed to our folks if we went ahead with this, would be the front of our church where you see the cross, if you're coming up 322. You can actually come out of the kids' wing right out to a place where there would be a nice spot for a potential playground. They could be fenced in, and they would leave from the preschool right into the playground. The other option would be perhaps at the end of the parking lot on that same side.
But the plan is to enclose it?
Correct, yeah.
That's all.
Okay, any other questions?
I've done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ordinance Task Force update, Scott and Kristen.
Well, this was more Kristen's idea, but the ordinance task force has been working on the scenic resources, well, actually scenic and historic resources amendment to our land use code, which also includes the scenic resources map. We've met with Kristen about, we being John Scott, David Sweet, and myself, to try to understand her concerns about this ordinance and its impact on the property owners along these road corridors and also the scenic corridors that extend through certain properties. For example, the McCausland property, we all know the scenic vista as you look south towards Callan Township is one of those areas where the view goes well into the property, actually through the property. So the idea was to discuss with the board this process and make sure that the board is comfortable proceeding before we get more further into this, and then the board decides they don't want to do this process. One of the ideas that I discussed at the Ordinance Task Force meeting was the idea of having a meeting and inviting the folks that are along these corridors and whose properties would be impacted to some extent, whether it's determined that we're looking at 200 feet in the property, 800 to 1,000 feet, those types of things, and actually what whether it's the historic resource that's there, whether it's a vista, or exactly what it is. Nate Klein has been working with us to revise the map, which, yes, it is in there. It's a little small, but that shows the view sheds that we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, when I first read the ordinance, I had a tough time understanding exactly what was being regulated. And so I had guided, I mean, there's obviously, anytime your zoning ordinance has to be construed it has to be as clear as it can be. If it's vague, then it fails, and it's void ab initio. It's called void for vagueness. So I felt the first draft was very squishy, would be the way I would describe it. And I asked them to tighten it up so that everybody understood, both the township, the planning commission, the historical commission, and the property owner understood what it was if your property was in one of these scenic district overlays. What does that mean? And I wasn't really fully understanding it. I think it's getting better, but what I'm concerned about, I'm not a policymaker. I just want to make sure that there's at least 2 of you on the board that think this is something that you want to do and understand its impact upon properties and its impact upon properties that are within either scenic district 1, 2, or 3. So that, because there's a lot of consultant time being spent, both from your planners, my office, and Pannoni, to refine and make this be a more clear, non-vague ordinance. But I see it as having fairly significant impact if your property happens to be in one of these sub-districts. And again, not knowing, I'm new to this, not knowing how much, whether you guys all go to the task force meetings, whether you have many things on your plate, I thought it was important to take a step back and make sure visually you understood what the map is showing, and understood then looking at the map and looking at the text of the ordinance that it's something that you want your consultants to go forward with. So it has 3 sub-districts. One is Scenic District 1, which is these road rights-of-way that are shown on this map that are in green. Scenic District 2 is portions of, they're within 200 feet beyond the road right-of-way. So you take this scenic road and go 200 feet back, and there are certain limitations and restrictions on what can and can't be done in that 200 feet. And then the third one is Scenic District 3, which goes beyond from 200 feet all the way back to 1,000 feet off of that public road that's considered to be scenic. And again, having restrictions on what can and can't be done within that third district. So it's a fairly significant area of land that's going to be constrained by what's in this ordinance, and I think it's important for you guys to take a look at the map. And I'm not suggesting you need to do it right this second, because it does take some time to go back and forth, but then to, get back in touch with Scott as to whether or not you have further questions and need the consultants to come in and explain it better, or whether you say, yeah, you know what, this makes a lot of sense, please go forward and refine it and bring it back to us when it's ready for further discussion.
So if you're along this road, with these scenic roads, anything you want to do with your property has to be.
You're within an overlay, so this is, and that's the other thing, overlays are confusing. Your underlining zoning district will stay the same, but it's like a layer on top of it. So you now then have to refer to this particular ordinance and see what it means to be within sub-district 1 and what you do or don't have to do as a result of that. So it's an additional planning step. You have additional documentation that you have to submit to the township that shows the impact of what you're trying to do, how that's going to affect the scenic view shed of that particular road.
What's the whole point of the ordinance?
The point of the ordinance is to maintain, for example, if you're driving down 322 and you overlook and see this beautiful scenic view, that remains intact to the greatest extent possible.
It's kind of like limiting property owners. I don't like it.
You are, so I think that, and that's, I thought that you were going to have that concern, and I just want to make sure before you continue, because we've had 2 meetings already. And these planners, they have a vision of what, and Scott, did this come out of your comprehensive plan? Was this a goal from the comprehensive plan? Yeah, so they're doing what your comprehensive plan guided them to do. But like I said, I wanted to make sure that the board understood and gives the go-ahead to move forward.
And this is actually already in place through the comp plan. It's simply, right now, it's more or less a map, and there's no guidance on what it really means. So that's more what we're trying to get to now.
So I say we table it then, because I'm kind of in the same viewpoint, is until we have the 100% clarity, I don't want to commit to something. And
Well, what I would suggest both of you do is to take the time to read it.
Yeah.
And then ask questions, because, again, because it is in the comprehensive plan, it's something that, it doesn't mean the board doesn't have to follow everything in the comprehensive plan. That's specifically stated in the MPC. But maybe there's a portion of it that you do think is worth keeping and
Right.
preserving, and then that's the direction that you give to your consultants.
I just think dictating people's,
So I think maybe a little bit of background, because I've been involved in the task force more than either of you have. What it basically means is the comprehensive plan identified what the township considered to be important resources within the township, which are the historic buildings and the view shed. But it didn't put any teeth into how you preserve or protect those resources. And that's what this would do. So it's an effort to provide the township with a structure so that those factors, the view shed, have to be considered in part of the planning process if somebody comes in with a land development plan.
And
Or a garage, or a,
Yeah, I mean, it's
It's
the
everything.
applicability is preliminary and final plans, sign permits, logging permits, zoning permits, and building permits. So any type, if any of one of those applications is submitted, this ordinance comes into play.
but then why, I guess my question is, if it's for land development, but you have a Causum tract isn't a historic resource road, or a scenic resource road, but wouldn't that be what you want to try to almost have more say in, of what, the larger tracts?
That's what it does.
What's not? wouldn't that be,
He's saying it's not abutting, the green line doesn't go beyond.
Goes right to it.
Yeah, I don't know how so, Scott, can you explain how what's shown on this map was determined? Was that through John and Dave driving around, or was it done through the comprehensive plan process?
It was done both. John and David drove around, I believe it's a year ago, based on, I took the map and exploded it and gave them sections to look at, and they identified some new vistas and view sheds. They also identified some that they couldn't find and were removed from the map, but the green line, there'll be some, there's some other, you can't really see it here, but there's some other, in the legend, there's information that would indicate whether it's, which of the sections applies to these lines, and also the vista points. There's a list that goes with this map that identifies the various points in the map and what you're looking at. So that's in the ordinance, and I can send that to you. And also, John Gott and David will be discussing this at the ordinance task force meeting. I believe it's March 20th, Wednesday, March 20th.
Maybe it's appropriate for the board, if they can, to go to that and get a better in-depth explanation and be able to ask the people that drafted more pointed questions. And maybe it's that you, again, I'm not the policymaker, you take a real close look at this as the starting point to say, yeah, I agree, these are really critical points that we want to make sure we're protecting in the future. And maybe the focus is on refining the map, I don't know.
Yeah, and I would need a bigger version of the map, because that's the only thing I have to go off of, and that's tough to even read.
All right, well, why don't we start with getting you that? Yep.
I'll send the entire document and also put 11 by 17 map, or even the exploded sections of it in your mail bins.
Okay, perfect. Public comment on agenda items. Seeing none, do I have a notice? Do we have any notices? I don't believe we do.
Wait, Mary said there's a resolution, under ordinances and resolutions.
Oh. Resolution 05 of 2019 endorsing the Landscapes 3 comprehensive plan.
I discussed this in my manager's report last month. The county is requesting that all municipalities in Chester County endorse the Landscapes 3, that is the county's comprehensive plan, their vision for the future, and they're also asking the municipalities to consider Landscapes 3 as part of their planning toolbox for things like multimodal transportation, historic resources, et cetera, which we already do. And as a matter of fact, as part of the package that we approved, or the board approved in November, multimodal transportation improvements, or I should say amendments, historic resource amendments, I'm trying to think what else was in there, are in line with Landscapes 3. So I think we're, once again, ahead of the curve, but there's still things that we may need to look at and improve on. But that's the intent of this resolution.
I'll make a motion, we adopt Resolution 05 of 2019.
And I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And then now we'll go to public comment on agenda items. Still seeing none. Any notices?
I think we did have a brief executive session after the last meeting.
So there was a brief executive session following the Board of Supervisors meeting. What day was that? That was
21st.
To be,
February 21st?
yes.
February 21st, 2019, to discuss legal issues. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.